All right, people, welcome back to the channel. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to this video. Now, people, we have some information that we want to be sharing. We will be sharing with you in this video. I I deem it as something very, very important, something very interesting that I do believe that the YouTube audience need to know about because it is something that has been happening in Jamaica for quite some time now. And it seems as if it has gone a little bit overboard where these students are concerned, where it bring some sort of undue pressure on the kids. So what we want to talk about is the recruiting that is taking place in sports, whether it is football, track and field, or even school challenge quiz. Yeah, recruiting has been taking place in that department as well. And for some reason, some of the sports, the students go under a lot of pressure where that is concerned. And even we're hearing talks even about them reaching to a point of as deep as suicide. You know what I mean? And that is something we need to talk about in the sporting sphere so that persons can know what is taking place. And this was revealed by psychologist Dr. Olivia Rose and the children's advocate Diane Gordon Harrison. Um, that this has, some sort of formidable psychological hurdles, pressures that is being faced by sports recruits at school level. And they call them victims. Yeah, they call them victims in this one. And their parents, they are pretty much afraid to complain. And that is very serious. The program has disclosed that this is what is happening. The kids, the parents, they are pretty much afraid. You know what I mean? And it is not a good look. And this is the pressure that some schools, some coaches, some programs place on the athletes. Some of these people, these student athletes, they suffer in silence. And information reaching us is that others that, as I said earlier, it has gone as far as student athletes being suicidal. So we have to be very careful how we recruit, how we do um, take the students from school to school and what we say to them, how we treat them, because it puts a lot of pressure on them. Now, there are many ills and negative, obvious, and unintended consequences associated with win at all cost approach to sports by our schools. Yeah. And they have been pointed out ad nauseum. So, is it a situation where these schools are not necessarily paying for what they're doing to some of these athletes? Or is it because these things are not reported and these students continue to suffer in silence? The approach leads to recruiting of students who are talented, you know what I mean? And to those schools, the psychological negatives mentioned by the psychologist and the children advocate just add to the stack of abuse to which our children are exposed. Of course, pointing these out always seems to fall on the deaf ears of the Ministry of Education and ISA, the two bodies that are supposed to right these wrongs as they continue undeterred along their merry way. Now, the program also showed coaches of poorer schools lamenting the constant robbing of their students with sports talent who they discovered and nurtured to prominence. It was disclosed that Antonio Watson, yes, we recently interviewed him here on the coach's desk, who, and he indicated, he told us that a lot of school wanted him, and Calabar was one of those schools. And he did so brilliant at the World Athletics Championship, winning himself that 400 meters. He was bombarded with offers from older, richer, more endowed schools to leave Petersfield and change allegiance to these institutions in Kingston. He said that on the program. So this is a fact. He Had he relented, had he succumbed, this would have unfairly robbed the coaches, Petersfield High, and the community of their well-deserved moment in the sun. Their association with glory and excellence, which incidentally they gave him the keys to uh, Westmoreland, you know what I mean, or the town Savlamar. Uh, their satisfaction of knowing not only that they could, but that they had guided one of their own to the pinnacle of success. What a confidence builder for all in the community. So they're basically saying that it also robs community of their glory, so to speak, of their what you'd call it, limelight, to the success that he would have given them coming from a Petersfield, coming from a Westmoreland. Yeah. Now imagine if he had left Petersfield for a bigger school with better facilities, supposedly better coaches, greener pastures in Kingston. They would have not got the glory, taken the credit for his success, and reigned on what should have been Petersfield parade. Yeah, it would have not have helped Petersfield, and would have perpetuated the myth that sports success can only come by the way of the richer schools. And they are saying, without a doubt, that that is a lie. Now, taking sports talent from the smaller, poor schools is not the best interest of the children or of the school. The school or education, socialization system, or Jamaica society. This win at all cost approach to sports by our schools and the resulting recruiting for sports purposes by schools, weak nor smaller, poor schools, makes our education socialization system less efficient and effective, exploits and then abandon poor people's children, as noted by one of the coaches in a TVJ program. People, what are your thoughts on this? Do you believe that there's merit to this thing, or schools should continue to recruit because it gives students better opportunity? But with the case noted, Antonio Watson, did he get didn't he get a good opportunity being at Petersfield? That's the question. Now, they are saying that Jamaica must ban recruiting for sports purposes by our schools. So if you're recruiting a child, they're inadvertently saying it should not be because of sporting reasons. It should be because of academic or probably other circumstances why they have to change location. They're saying that there should be a refocus on the educational socialization mission of the school, and understand that the only chance we have of delivering quality education to all our children is by doing all we can to build up, strengthen or poor, weaker schools, not to make them even weaker. Snatching, buying, taking away their sport talent is making them weaker. Hmm. Is that so? Is it making the school weaker academically or sport wise? But isn't that a part of socialization? Very good point there. Um, there are so many ills associated with the overemphasis on winning at sports in schools. These have shown up and over again throughout the years. We have been swept under the carpet, but have been swept under the carpet, covered up, overlooked by the powers that be. Now, I understand that there are school dormitories that are three-fourths full with sports recruits, while genuine, legitimate youngsters who need to be to board must find lodgings elsewhere. Hmm. Schools with highly experienced, extremely competent, and able sports administrators, one of whose principals was president of ISA for many years, have been found to have breached the rules of eligibility. Hmm. But instead of being ejected from the competition, at least for the current year, which would send a clear message to all and sundry, they have been given a slap on the wrist and allowed to continue enjoy the benefits of the competition. And incidentally, there's a lot of questions that I've been asking. Is a bias towards the what you'd call it, big name schools, the traditional schools, because when you look at Innswood and another school who has been banned from the competition, we're using ineligible players. But that is another case to look into. Someone asked the question, there are difference in the level of in in ineligibility. That's a good question. Now, schools have co-opted sports academies in their desperate attempt to win. The win at all cost mentality has not only led to the robbing of sports stars from poor Jamaican schools, but has given rise to the bringing in of foreign sports recruits to take the place of Jamaicans in schools, while poor, deserving school Jamaicans yearn for the opportunity. Students who have legitimately earned their places at a school and who should be in the target of all activities offered by the school are crowded out by these sports recruits, both local and foreign. But my question is that uh, do those students who come in from overseas, are they displacing any other students who would have been a part of the program or who would have been a part of the academic or cohort? Are they displacing those students? No, I don't believe so. I think what they do is to make space for them. But if you're looking at the sports wise aspect of it, they might be displacing some students. You know what I mean? So that in itself, and there's another flip side to it. They're adding, or some schools, what they do is to basically get these recruits to plug the gaps of areas of weaknesses, of areas where they are short. So I don't necessarily agree that they are not giving the opportunity to the locals. You know what I mean? Now, school recruits is an attempt to win at all costs. Period. It has nothing to do with the welfare of our children. They are just collateral damage. Mhm. Recruiting for sports purposes by school is so unprincipled, out of line with the spirit in which sports should be played in school. It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. So, totally out of sync with what the role of sports should be at the school level: educational, socializing, teaching, learning tool. Recruiting for sports purposes is such a cesspool of unethical behavior that one is hard pressed to fathom how our leaders in education, politics, and the church can continue to turn a blind eye and deaf ears to this practice. Interestingly, a lot of these students who partake in our Jamaican system or Jamaican schools are recruited by schools overseas to enhance their program, and they still end up with an education, with a first degree or a second degree. Is that unethical? I'm just asking these questions as well, because we have to put things into perspective. Now, it continues. It is ironic that although sports recruiting was introduced to our schoolboy football by an Englishman, it doesn't happen in England, which gave us the template of our education socialization system and as one of the most rabid and fanatical sports populations. I look at Finland and it's not there. In fact, nowhere in Europe do I find it. It's not in Singapore. And when South Korea was lifting itself from the bottom after ravages of war, they didn't even understand the concept of student athlete. So fully focused were their leaders on educating, socializing, and training their populace. In Jamaica's case, it seems the saying is not apt. We have met the enemy, and he is us, the enemy. is within. This is a very, very, very interesting, very, very interesting topic. And we have to big up Dr. Lascelles Moggy Graham, who is the author of this article after research was done by, well, I guess he did his research with Dr. Olivia and children advocate leader there. But there are a lot of questions that can be asked from this information. A lot. Uh, they be prejudiced. Uh, is there a equilibrium in this? Is there a balance? Uh, is it a situation where the rules favor some schools while they don't? Because if you hear of a child being abused and not being treated well at a particular school, it is highlighted, but when it is at a particular or another school, it is not highlighted. And these things, like they said in the earlier in the article, that it is shoved under the carpet. So I mean, I do believe that this situation, it is something that can be looked into. I have seen where students have been recruited from schools that are not quote unquote up there in the realms of sports coaching. And I've seen where that child left that school, went to a school that is quote unquote prominent with a better coach than where he was coming from. And that child got a scholarship. That child represent Jamaica. And that child is doing well for himself. So, I mean, in all of this, I do believe that there might be situations where you can look at and say persons have seen where it is good where recruiting is concerned, and there the other side of it where persons have regret making that decision to leave the schools that they're actually coming from. So I think there should be some sort of understanding, some sort of, because at the end of the day it's the parents decision also. What do I want best for my child? So Antonio's parent and coaches obviously would have persuaded him to stay in Westmoreland or Hanover, wherever that school is, Petersfield. Another child parent, based on the offer, based on what they were told when that meeting was held, decide to move the child. So solely it's not really on the child, it's mostly on the parents where recruiting is concerned, or the guardian in their life. You know what I mean? So I think there has to be some understanding of this matter, not just something that we throw out there and you bash recruiting or you agree with recruiting. It is something that can be, have a board meeting about. You sit and you talk about it to decide whether or not it is fact, it is something good. Because people will tell you, I've seen good from recruiting, and on the other hand, I've seen bad from recruiting. What say you? Which do you prefer? Recruiting or no recruiting? How do we how do we actually get a balance in this? Recruiting or no recruiting? Are the pointers that ISA or the rules that ISA placed, is it a good thing to basically curtail this high level of recruiting? Because you have sometimes some schools, you get recruited to a school and then you move from that school to another school that you were recruited from and you didn't like it, and then you go back. Now the eligibility of the child at the Easter competition, the window is small for that child. So it is something that can be, they can sit down and speak about it. But I think there's good and in recruiting. Also, there's some bad in it as well. But where do we strike the balance? Where do we strike the balance? And that is where the powers that be, all the stakeholders, because I do believe that recruiting has a lot to do with parents as well, not only the students, and this is where the parents comes in as a stakeholder of the school. So I don't know. Let's see what you say about this, people. Put your opinion in the comment section and let us have a discussion on the matter. Until next time, stay safe. Peace out.